Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the Black-Eyed Kids. But now, let me show off some artwork from your upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs, first. So let me go show you. All right, here we go. Here is my '90s cover. Well, this cover I did basically harken back to the comic books of the '90s. Looks pretty good. This is one of 3 different variant covers you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. The name of my graphic novel is Scumdogs. It's a parody book. I parody cartoons that I think that we all grew up with. That I think would be fun. The parody. The Scumdogs themselves, what they are is in the future. There's such a thing known as the Scumdog Sports. It's basically superhuman sporting events held with superhuman monsters. The athletes are monsters. See, they trade in their humanity, and that's why they're called Scumdogs. They do it for, money and glory. Well, just for money, just for money. So they're scum and dogs for it. All right? On this cover, you'll see a bunch of guys. This is most of my cast, but the 2 main characters are Deathmug and Buick Starpoon. Deathmug being the purple guy with the metal mask, and Buick Starpoon being the guy with the, pink pompadour hair. Looks pretty good, huh? Now, Deathmug is a parody of, Cobra Commander and Serpentor from G.I. Joe. Like Cobra Commander, he's got a metal mask, and like Serpentor, he's got gold on him. And he's purple like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. While Buick Starpoon is a G.I. Joe parody. He's a parody of Duke from G.I. Joe. But he's also a parody of James T. Kirk and Buzz Lightyear, the space hero kind of character. Notice the uniform he's wearing? Everyone wearing a uniform like him is part of his team. All right? In the Space Forces. Over here, the guy with the mohawk, his name is Roadhog. All G.I. Joe, he's like a G.I. Joe character, and like all G.I. Joes, he has a military specialty. His specialty is that he's part of the army. While this bald guy with a gun down here, his name is Beach Pounder. His specialty is that he's a Marine. While this guy back here in the red uniform driving that vehicle, see him back there? His name is Blast Tank. His specialty is that he's a heavy vehicle specialist, a tanker. Now, this cover looks pretty good. It's one of 3 different variant covers you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. Over here, now we're going to look at Miss Breasty Melons. Miss Breasty Melons is a fun character here. She's the second in command of Buick Starpoon on the Wild Rangers. That's the name of Buick Starpoon's team in the Space Forces. She was assigned to Buick Starpoon because, while the Wild Rangers fight the Scumdogs and save the day, they're just highly destructive idiots that destroy everything in sight. So to cut down on the damage, her superiors in the Space Forces assigned Girl Friday as the second in command of Buick Starpoon. She was put on the Wild Rangers, and she hates her job because she feels like her career in the military is over because she's now just a babysitter. So go and please read my graphic novel. All right, let's see. Please go hit that like button for me because it helps me fight the algorithm, as well as please go share this video on social media. And you're going to love Girl Friday. Now, here we have Deathmug's henchman, because in all 80s cartoons, you get the idea. In all 80s cartoons, the main villain, his henchmen would be total idiots. These are Deathmug's idiots. The blue guy with the top hat is Murdermouth, and the pink guy down here is Sloppy. They're a couple of idiots that destroy everything in sight and can't do anything right. They're just going to be fun when you read them. By the way, go over to Indiegogo, search out Scumdogs, go to my pre-launch page, sign up for it. The first 100 backers get a free poster of Buick Starpoon. Now we have Hair Metal Doctor. He's a parody of Dr. Mindbender from G.I. Joe, a mad scientist, but my mad scientist here is crossed over with a hair metal musician because I thought he'd be great as a villain in the Scumdogs. See, he joined up with Deathmug because he was a mad scientist and he thinks of all the mad gadgets and stuff that Scumdogs use to take over the world, and he does it while being who he is, Hair Metal Doctor. And here we have Miss Breasty Melons. She's like the Baroness from G.I. Joe, but unlike the Baroness, she's a party girl who only became a villain because she thought it'd be fun. That's Miss Rusty Mullins here. Looks pretty good. Now, let me exit out of these. Now, we're going to look at Black Eyed Kids today, but first, before we do anything else, let me go over to Indiegogo to see if there's any new Indiegogos up. All right. Let's go down here. There's Earth, an alternate. There's Earth. All right. There's Alien Alamo, which is still funny and good. Very nice. Luck Comics. Not too bad. Let's see. Maybe go over here. Okay. Don't see anything too much. We can come back later. All right. All right. Let's go over and look at some Black Eyed Kids, huh? The Black Eyed Kids, the mysterious Black Eyed Kids, a story that's been traveling around for years about these incidents where these children, people encounter these children with black eyes, these very weird children. They almost sound like ghosts, fairies, or, well, anything else. What are they? Who knows? They're very cool looking, though, and they look very dangerous. People have encountered these kids, when they basically wanted, as well as adults with black eyes, when they basically went up to their doors, knocked on them at night, asking to come in. A lot of these people didn't let these kids in once they realized that they had black eyes and stuff. At first the kids were asking if they could be let inside. The person whose house they were trying to get into wasn't so sure. I mean, they were children after all. Couldn't really live if these kids were homeless or something. But then they look at the eyes of the children and realize they didn't have any real. They were just black and didn't really let them in. Them and stuff. They report that these children feel off and strange. People have encountered them in the streets. Well, one guy encountered them when he was in his car, and these kids wanted to be let into his car with him. A lot of these people don't let that, and they if they just close the door and just lock up and do something about it instead of the children insist on being let inside. Occasionally they are let inside, and what happens is a lot of these cases where what happens is they let the people don't really know what happens. They can't remember anything that happens afterwards when they let them inside. So it's very mysterious and very strange. And we'll be looking at these stories tonight. And sounds like fun as hell. Well, it looks good to me. Let me go over here, make sure we're still streaming. Let me look at over here. Fun as hell. Hit that like button, by the way, folks, if you have not, as well as please share this video out on social media. Let's see. Very cool looking stories. What to look at first? Could look at Phantom. So look at this one, maybe. Let's go look at this story and stuff, as well as what I told you about this. I mean, these are very mysterious stories. I mean, what we're talking about, the Black Eyed Kids, is very, very interesting. Just recently, I wrote an article here. I'm reading this article at Mysterious Universe titled Hypnotizing Someone Telepathically, an eerie, mystifying, almost diabolical act. I thought that today I would share with you another extract from the Defense Intelligence Agency's Controlled Offensive Behavior, our document of 1972. As I noted last week, this one is particularly creepy as it focuses on the possibility of secretly using psychics to hypnotize people, and you'll see its subject that are elements of U.S. intelligence were worried about during the Cold War. Maybe they still are. We're told the following, according to Upstander and Schneider: the ability to put people to sleep and wake them up telepathically from a distance of a few yards to over 1,000 miles became the most thoroughly tested and perfectly contribution of the Soviets to international parapsychology. It is reported that the ability to control a person's consciousness with telepathy is being further studied and tested in laboratories in Leningrad and Moscow. This manner of using telepathy to hypnotize people makes me think of the disturbing activities of none other than the Black-Eyed Children. Aren't familiar with these creepy kids? Here's a bit of background material for you. The phenomenon first surfaced publicly in the late 1990s, although since the publicity began, people have claimed encounters with the BECs going back as early as the 1930s. They're called Black-Eyed Children for a very good reason. Their eyes are completely black and sometimes larger than normal. That, of course, provokes imagery of the so-called, aliens. The Greys. Aliens that are also well known in the field of UFOlogy. There are other weird aspects to the BEs too. Their skin is often just as pale, but milk white. Is not, often not just pale, but milk white. In terms of their ages, they always seem to be frozen in time. By that I mean, I've yet to receive a report that involves a kid less than around 11, and I haven't come across a case where the kid was more than roughly 14. But there have been cases of adults. Get it? Of adult black-eyed people, where children, their clothing is always a black hoodie. Now we get to the part of the story that relates to the, offensive behavior. USSR document highlighted last week, typically the BEC arrive on a doorstep late at night. There are some daytime encounters, but they are definitely in their minority. There's usually a loud, slow knock on the door, too. I mentioned that because in some cases the BEC seem not to understand what doorbells are, which is very strange. Here's when the high strangeness really begins. It might be that they don't know what doorbells are. It's because they're actually fairies, and they come from some magical world where they use magic or just knock on doors. Like they're ultra-terrestrials, and they just came here to screw with people. Could be, but very interesting. By the way, folks, hit that like button for me, as well as please go share this video on, Twitter and Facebook. Yes. Imagine you're in the unfortunate position of the people who are confronted by the BEC. Like, likelihood is that if you saw a trio of black-eyed little monsters on the doorstep, children actually, you wouldn't open the door. But here's the weird thing. Many victims of BEC do open the door. A number of people have said they felt compelled to open the door, even though they knew they shouldn't have. It was for many people a feeling of being driven to open the door, a kind of hypnotism. Even the kids claim they are lost and need to use the phone, or they are homeless and need something to eat. It's all about entering the home with permission given. Sounds like a vampire, because that's what vampires do. They ask for permission to enter. Could be. They do look like it, sound like vampires, don't they, folks? Oh, very, very cool. This is just cool right here. Oh, let's read this. And not to mention they feel like similar to the shadow people too, with the black eyes and stuff. I mean, yeah, and stuff. They remind me of the shadow people. Yeah. By the way, if you want to look more at my shadow people, I have a video up where we look at shadow people. So go look at it, folks. If you want to, we'll look at more of these stories and have some more fun. It has been stressed that most of the time the hypnotism isn't strong enough to let the BEC on the homes of the people into the homes of the people who are targeted. There are, however, a small number of cases in which the BEC have managed to get into the homes, and they do seem to place the people in society into states of mind control. That's when things get even stranger. People feel sick, weakened, as if their bodies were crashing. Yeah, there's that. But there's also other stories where people let them into the stories where they let the kids into the house. And the woman did get injured and sick, but it could have been the kid was basically warning her that she was going to get an infection in her foot. And from time to time, the woman continues to see this black-eyed girl in her house watching TV for some reason. Maybe it's a ghost. Very strange. A telepathic ghost that can make itself invisible? Maybe. Or maybe it's actually, it can make itself invisible. All very good. But that's another story I told you about. This woman is one of those people who let one of these black-eyed kids into her house. And She doesn't know what happened after that. She can't remember. She woke up the next morning, basically, but she did encounter the black-eyed kid in her house later on. The girl touched her foot, and it looked like she got an infection in her foot, but she wasn't so sure the kid actually did that to her. It might have been, but she feels like the kid was trying to warn her that she'd get an infection in her foot. And she basically recovered. But occasionally, like a ghost, she occasionally sees this girl still in her house watching TV. I'm just stressing what the exact events are. Very interesting. Let's see. When things get kind of like kind of diabetic whose blood sugar levels were plummeting. Kind of like the witnesses described getting. The witnesses getting a dose of the shakes, of becoming cold and clammy, and of becoming confused, panicky, as if they are being drained of their energy, which may well be the goal. The most important part of all of this, however, is the matter of people feeling under the control of the BEC. That aforementioned U.S. government document makes it clear that as far back as the 1920s, research in the field of using telepathic powers to hypnotize people existed. Just maybe then it's not just us or the Russians who have locked into this eerie era. Perhaps the BEC are using similar powers or identical powers, even try and find ways into the homes of terrified people. Could be. There's also white-eyed kids as well. We could look at them. Well, there's also green-eyed kids and stuff like that. We could take a look into that and maybe have some more fun here. What do you think, folks? Leave me a few chats. I'd love to hear from you. Hear from you guys. Ooh, character concepts. You want to look at black-eyed kids? Timothy Olsen, YouTube mods suck. Not as weird as the black-eyed peas. 2 for $10. A pizza is really cool. Okay. That's good for you, Timothy Olsen. Thank you for dropping by and leaving some chats. Feel free to leave some more because I love hearing from you guys. But yeah, there's also white-eyed kids, other red-eyed, blue, green-eyed kids. I mean, not just green eyes, but I mean really all covered green, or was it gold-colored eyes? Either way, you get the idea. These sound very strange, children and stuff. So, but it sounds pretty good. Let's see. Maybe go look at white-eyed kids for a moment. See about this. Here are the white-eyed kids. Reports of the phenomenon of the strange beings known as the white black-eyed kids have been reported for decades and generally follow a certain frightening pattern. The children usually in pairs do not always appear, mostly in rural or sparsely populated areas. They typically appear as normal children from afar, but a closer inspection will reveal that they have a sickly pale skin to them and that their eyes are completely dark, pools of black without any discernible iris or pupil, akin to the eyes of a shark. Although the tales may vary in their details, these mysterious entities are almost always described as exuding an intense wave of dread and panic, and their eyes are said to have a certain disturbing, sinister, and hypnotic quality. So that many of you probably know of these entities, and they become quite a fixture in the world of the paranormal, but what many might not realize is that there is another permutation of the phenomenon. When considerable rarer than black-eyed kids, there are a few, rarer than reports of black-eyed kids, there are fewer reports of similar mysterious beings than instead of black eyes of ones that are white. And while scarce, these accounts are every bit as creepy and bizarre. One of the most elaborate, let me read that again, are pure white, and that is, while scarce, these accounts are every bit as creepy and bizarre. One of the most elaborate, striking reports of white-eyed kids is a report that was featured in Side Paranational concerning a man who says that 2013 he was living with his brother and his brother's girlfriend. Well, in 2013, he was living with his brother and brother's girlfriend in a fairly small southern town. He claims that one day he went for a ride in his truck at 3 a.m. and on the way back stopped at a small grocery store to get some cigarettes. Parking his vehicle around the corner, it was It was as he was getting back into his pickup truck to head back home that the weirdness began with the tapping at his window. When he looked to see what the source was, he says that there was a young boy of around 8 or 9 years of age standing there just beyond the glass. The child was standing there completely motionless, and when asked what he wanted, merely politely asked the witness to roll the window down. The witness says, my hand started to reach for the crank, but I stopped myself. The pit in my stomach was starting to feel wrong. I shook my head and asked, what do you need, kid? Another few seconds before the kid replied, mister, I think I'm lost. I started to realize that besides this kid's mouth moving, he hasn't budged at all since knocking out my window. No change in facial expression, nothing. Where are your parents? I realized that my voice was starting to quiver. What the F, I'm a veteran. I'm not easily intimidated, and this is just a child, he said. I can't find them. Can you drive me home? Please take me home. Just unlock the doors and I'll get in. At this point, I feel like something was, up. I look away from the kid for the first time to make sure I put my keys in the ignition check. I glanced over at my right shoulder, wondering if this kid was a bait for some kind of robbery, but there weren't even cars behind me for about a block, let alone people standing nearby. I'm psyching myself out. The kid needs help, I told myself, so I looked back at the kid, and my blood ran cold. Why hadn't I noticed before? The kid had no pupils. F. He doesn't even have irises. It's just white, not just he's blind, where the pupils are milky, just effing white, stark white eyes. S. Well, he still hasn't moved a muscle. Then I noticed his skin, pale, almost translucent. The witness by this point was feeling terror overcome him in the presence of this thing, some nameless dread and sense of impending doom washing through him, and his shaky hand started up the ignition. The kid up to this point was still rather calm, timid, and pleading, but upon realizing the witness was about to leave, his whole demeanor soured, taking on an ominous tone. The witness explains, as soon as the thing started standing outside my truck heard the engine flare, he scrawled and started knocking on the window, not the light tapping from before, but hard. Mister, I just let me in your truck and take me home. It's okay. I don't know how I could feel his voice more than hear it, where previously what he was saying was hard to make out. I threw the truck into a drive and peeled out of there, glancing the rear view. Only once I cleared the full block, the kid still had barely moved and only turned his head to face me. What the F, I kept telling myself. I couldn't say anything else. I just kept driving at 15 miles per hour over the limit, and I'm pretty sure I blew through a couple of stop signs. It wasn't until I actually pulled into my driveway that I realized I was heading towards home. I put the truck in park and took a few breaths and calmed myself. After I got my bearings, I looked outside and realized that it was dark out, late twilight, almost night. I looked at my watch, which read 7:05. It was about no more than 5 miles away from the tobacco shop. It's very interesting. Very interesting. I heard of another story in which this guy basically tried to get the attention of black-eyed kids by sending out a email, or basically putting a ad in the newspaper, and ran it for months saying he would love to meet the black-eyed kids. One day he got a response and says they would love to meet him at this certain parking lot somewhere he could find. He did find the parking lot, but he was chickened out and didn't want to go there. And then later on, he got another message from them saying they were sorry that they missed him. That's very interesting. From that tobacco shop, but it took me almost 2.5 hours to get home. When did I lose that time? He were probably abducted, and they really screwed. Well, that is interesting. Very, very interesting. He claims that he sat there shaking in his truck for a full 20 minutes, wondering if that creepy kid had followed him and was perhaps milling about in the shadows. And when he finally worked up the courage to get out of there and stumbled to his house, where he locked all the doors and patrolled the residence with a handgun, when the brother and girlfriend came home, he told them what had happened, but they didn't really take it seriously. Nevertheless, it was upsetting, though, that he skipped work that following day, and says that he was plagued by a sense that he was being constantly watched. The following day, he finally got back to his truck, as personnel at a hospital still worrying, stashing his gun in the glove compartment just in case. And the story would take a rather strange turn, as was getting his truck from the parking garage to head home. He says, then I saw the handprints, 2 goddamned kid-sized handprints on the driver's side hand. prints on the driver's side of the door and 2 on the windshield. Greasy, nasty, effing handprints. I looked around the truck, down the parking nozzle, nothing, so I unlocked the truck, stepped in, closed in, locked the door and behind me, and then pulled the pistol out of the glove box. I started to put, this was getting his truck from he found the kid found him again then, or something like that. So, I didn't realize. I thought he didn't notice the handprints till later. Ooh, that is interesting. I think this guy was something really happened to this guy. Oh, this is very interesting. Unlocked the truck, stepped in, closed. Behind me, pulled the pistol. I started to put the key in the ignition, but I didn't feel quite right about that. I wondered that little effer was all over my truck. What if he put something to it? Maybe. So I got back out, holstered the Glock. I warned the holster, but I can't bring the pistol into the hospital, and popped the hood. I'm not much of a mechanic, so I didn't exactly know what to look for. I guess I wanted to make sure everything looked normal, reasonably satisfied. Not that I'd really recognize sabotage at a glance. Anyway, I got back in the truck and locked the door, and it was closing. I turned the ignition, no problems there. Once I put in the gear, I drove slowly, brake checked, just to make sure the brake line wasn't effed with. I got home just fine, though the house was empty as usual. As soon as the rain lit up, I took my camera outside, hoping to take a photo of the handprints, but they washed off, of course. I'm getting sick of this S. He insists that only the entrance to the parking garage were guarded and that the handprints had not been there when he had arrived. Vehicles seem to be popular targets for these creatures, and another very similar report along these lines comes from a Reddit user who says he had to brush with the bazaar while at a 24-hour shopping center car park waiting for a friend at around 10 p.m. He claims that this goes for the black-eyed kids too, all very interesting. Shopping center car park waiting for a field around 10 p.m. He claims that he sat there lost in his thoughts. A young kid suddenly popped up out of nowhere to tap on his window and ask for a ride. The witness asked him where his parents were, but the boy merely repeated that he was lost and needed a ride home. Things only get more harrowing from there, as the witness says. This was definitely weird. I looked at him again. Then I did a double take. Holy asked. His eyes were white, not just white around the edges, but sun-ending white through the entire thing. The entire eye, the entire thing. No iris, no pupil, just a solid wall of light. I really didn't know why, but I felt myself smiling slightly as I gazed at him. Then my thoughts began to collect again. It must have been about 3 seconds. Sorry, no, kid, I have to go. I immediately regretted replying, but you have to take me, the kid replied. I don't know how, but I could feel his voice more than hear it. His words began echoing in my mind longer than it should. No, kid, I have to go. I started panicking. The kid replied again, this time with something indescribable behind his voice. I am lost and I just want to go home. I don't know how, but at this point it was as if someone had put the kid's voice on a loudspeaker. As he spoke, I felt as though a booming was resonating within the kid. The force of the kid's voice was so strong I felt strongly sympathetic to the kid, almost like I was being forced to buy him anyway. With the last ounce of control I had left, I turned the car on and slammed on the accelerator. The kid immediately started out to take me with you. At this point, it was as though the kid's voice was a machine gun firing into me. I immediately sped to the nearest exit in a dreamlike state and drove into the night. My friend at this point couldn't find his own way back to his house, which he did later while driving and exiting from the car park. I could still feel his voice within me, resonating with an amplified volume. The force of his voice as if I had been picked up and violently shaken by the kid whose voice was so clear and my conscious was unconscious, huh? Do you think he was also abducted? Do you think he lost time? Let's see. Unconsciousness was analyzing every nuance and inflection of what he had said, like I was being forced to. There was so much force behind it, and an incredibly eerie similarity to the previous report. The witness says that when he got home to his apartment, an ominous thunderstorm started up, and he would notice an anomalous handprint on his car. He explains. There was a tremendous thunderstorm, and There was a tremendous thunderstorm, and I noticed flashes, although I didn't see it, of lightning when I was at my apartment building. I live in a complex. I opened a huge metal door to get in, and I was soaking wet. There was a handprint on it. I only noticed when I looked down to pull on the handle, about the same height a small child would place their hands. The handprint was white, and although the whole door was dripping with water, the handprint seemed made of recently dried paint. I touched it and looked up, and I felt it in my hand just to make sure it was paint. It was. I looked down again. The handprint, within the 2 second span of me sampling it, looked up and had gone from white to clear. From the rain dripping on the door, I touched it again and felt it was paint, but now completely soaked with water and far more fluid than it was before, indicating it was being soaked. I looked down again. It had vanished. I put my hand on where the paint had been, but it was nothing but a metal door behind it. For some reason, I looked behind me. Of course, there was no one there. I went inside and made my way up to my apartment and early night. I have not yet encountered any white-eyed kids since, or any being of a supernatural type for that matter. Ooh, these wild encounters are remarkably similar to also share a lot of common with typical black-eyed kids encounters, such as the child approaching a lone witness in a secluded place, such as a rural house or a car at night, as was the pleading to be left in for the witness to help them. For some reason, these entities seem to be unable to enter a home or vehicle unless they are specifically invited to do so, and they will often become increasingly aggressive and malevolent if they refuse. Just as in these counts, it always seems that they cannot force their way in unless specifically invited. And in most cases, when the missing children eventually give up and leave the victim, if left exasperated, confused, and with the profound sense that they have just avoided some sort of dire fate, the irrational fear that came crashing in like a sudden wave in these reports is also a hallmark of black-eyed kids encounters. But there are some differences as well in this case. There's obviously the color of the eyes. There's also the unusual mention of lost time in one of the reports, as well as the additional harassment and evidence left behind in the form of the handprints after the initial encounters. Not really typical of BEKs. What to make of all of it? Did it really happen at all? Another interesting white-eyed kid report was given to the site Phantoms and Monsters by a witness who says that on this day he had been out with some friends swimming in a lake, jumping off a cliff and into the water below, and that for the most of the time they had been alone. However, at one point another group arrived, and along with them a sense that something was not quite, well, right, he explains. A truck arrived with a tall, thin guy, maybe 16, and two girls around the same age. It was when they arrived and started jumping off the cliff, too, that I became uneasy. I asked my friends if we could start baking home, and they were like, sure. As I got on my bike, I turned around to take one last look, and the guy was staring at me, but I noticed that he had only white eyes, no color, no pupil, nothing. At this point, I hadn't even heard of white-eyed kids, so I Googled people without pupils, and nothing came up. It was weird, but true. This is a bit different from black-eyed kids encounters in that BEKs are never seen driving vehicles, indeed usually needing to be given a ride, and they are also tend to avoid approaching groups of people and preferring solitary prey. In another case from Phantoms and Monsters, we have a report given by Kay Mitchell, who had his encounter in 2005 at the Petrified Forest National Park in the state of Arizona. He claims that the road he was on was bleak and empty with no other cars around, and at that sunset, he pulled his car over to the side of the road to take a rest, have a smoke, and check his maps. He got out of the car, and then when he saw something pretty odd out there in the middle of nowhere, he says that the terrifying string of events that would happen next. Very interesting. Let's go back over here. What did you say? White-eyed fizz? Was it that East End boys and the West End girls? I don't. That's funny. Instead of the black-eyed kids, he got Chris Hansen. Maybe. Ooh boy, it's very interesting. Let's go back over here. Let's see. I got out to have a smoke and check at the map. And out of nowhere, there was a kid who looked maybe 13 in a hoodie and jeans. She asked me if I would give her a ride. I couldn't because I was parked to the gills in the middle of moving. So I declined, but offered to let her use my phone so she could call someone. I even offered to wait with her until someone picked her up. She became livid and gave me a grimace, which is when I noticed the eyes purely right. I opened my trunk and grabbed a sandwich and bottle of water. So I set them on the ground and got back in my car. Within a week, I was in the hospital with complete retinal retinal failure, with no idea from the doctors why it happened, and ended up flat-lying twice. I didn't think much about it until I was telling my Nana from Norway about it, and she told me they're death harbingers. What's the most unnerving is the fact that I had seen her a few more times afterwards in multiple cities and states. This account is interesting that it paints the entity as a portent of death or misfortune, perhaps even the cause of it. And indeed, it seems like bad things happen when people let the black-eyed kids get too close or allow them in as well. In a way, many of these accounts seem to point to the white-eyed kids being some version of their more well-known black-eyed brethren. So is there some kind of link between them? What significance do this? Well, there's also the effect of the red-eyed kids or green-eyed kids as well. Accounts have and what do, well, the black as well as the black-eyed kids and the white-eyed kids and the green-eyed kids have such accounts, and what do they mean? What connection do any of these have to do with the black-eyed kids? Indeed, what are they, if anything? Are these demons, ghosts, aliens? Whatever the answers may be, an interesting subspecies of phenomenon concerning the black-eyed kids, and it is all so surreal and bizarre that it seems we are nowhere near figuring out. Wow. That is interesting. Let's see. I need that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's see. Look at some. Very interesting. 35 minutes in, and we're having some more fun. Let's go look at some more stories. Phenomenon origins. Let's go look at this one. There can be no doubt that one of the creepiest phenomena to surface in the last 2 decades is that of what have become infamously known as the black-eyed children. It would be overly simplistic to suggest. Well, I guess we could look at this. I want to look at some more stories, though. I'm going to see about these. Black-eyed child in Notorious Woods. Let's look at this one. Located in West Sussex, England, Clapham Woods stands to the north of small village of Clapham, reveal mysterious universe. They had historically Clapham has been an archetypical English place. English villa, archetypical English place. One that's been around likely since Saxon times over the last 300 years. It has remained largely hidden from the outside world, except that it is for the last 4 decades since the early 1970s, Clapham Woods has been associated with murder, mystery, and a secret society called the Friends of Higgett. It was in 1972 that mystery began. In June of that year, police constable named Peter Goldsmith disappeared while walking through the woods. His body was not found for around 6 months, specifically on December 13th. What makes this even more intriguing is the fact that 2 months before P.C. Goldsmith vanished, had investigated the death of a woman who had been murdered in the very same woods. The 2 victims inextricably linked to one another. Or 2 victims, and, well, what's the word should I leave here? I can't really read that word for some reason. 2 victims, trying to find a good word. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. 2 victims were randomly linked to one another. Or maybe 2 victims randomly linked to one another. I guess so. I can't read that word that was there, really. Or I can't pronounce it. So I'll just put random. And as Martin also reveals, in his July 1975 prisoner Leon Foster disappeared and was subsequently found 3 weeks later by a couple who were searching for a horse in the woods, a horse that had also gone missing under mysterious circumstances. Next, on Halloween of 1978, the vicar of Clapham, the retired Reverend Harley Snurling, went missing. His body was found 3 years later by a Canadian tourist. Again, no cause of death could be identified. Sounds like the missing 411. Very much. We got to look at that again. I have looked at it, haven't I? By a Canadian tourist. Again, no cause of death could be identified. Things were far from over. 3 years later, 1981, the body of a woman named Julian Matthews was found in the woods. Matthews, a schizophrenic, had been raped and murdered, moving away from the human casualties of Clapham Woods. The matter of the disappearance of a number of dogs, it's hardly surprising that Clapham Woods gained a reputation as a place filled with menace and mystery. In 1987, the information surfaced suggesting that Clapham Woods was filled with something else, too, a powerful and dangerous group whose membership included elements of the British government called Higgett. Huh? The story of the Friends of Higgett was first surfaced publicly on the pages of Demonic Connection, 87 book written by Toyne Newton. Toyne? I just call him that guy. And these other guys as well. According to Walker, he met with one of the members of the secret group who confirmed that the deaths of the various people and the disappearance of the dogs were the work of the Friends of Higgett. Maybe. Which has been, I guess it could be, I say maybe, has been scrubbed as a quasi-pagan British occult order, while the existence of Friends of Higgett has yet to be fully confirmed. The unsettling story of dark and mysterious deaths in the heart of the Clapham Woods has ensured the legends of the group survives and thrives. You may wonder what all of this has to do with the Black Eyed Kids. Now you'll find out. Of the many people who contacted me with their experience with the BEC, one was Terry of New Orleans, 27 years of age. Terry, in September 2016, spent 2 months in the UK hanging out with relatives. Terry admitted to one that she had an interest in the paranormal and was excited by the prospect of spending a significant time in Clapham Woods. As she knew all too well of the legends and a copy of Toyne Newton's The Demonic Connection, she admitted that she found the whole area to be eerie, which it is. Most bizarre of all, however, was the fact that while she walked through the woods, Terry had a very brief encounter with one of the black-eyed children. In fact, it lasted barely a few seconds. As Terry went through the woods, she said she saw a small girl in a hoodie and jeans, both black in color, and laughed at her in an unseemly fashion. Most terrifying of all were the eyes, but now I don't have to explain what they looked like. In seconds, the black-eyed thing was gone. As for Terry, she was rooted to the ground in fear, hyperventilating. She just about managed to find her way out of the woods. None of this stopped Terry from returning to the woods 3 days later. However, she did not see the BEC again. Though we have an example of black-eyed children appearing when someone is immersed in the domain of the occult. Very interesting. Let's see. It's very interesting, isn't it? Let's see. Let's see. Have you guys hit that like button for me? Let's see. 4. If you have not hit that like button for me yet, folks, please do so. It really helps me fight the algorithm and lets more people see my content. As well as please go share this video on social media. Share it on Twitter. Share it on Facebook. Share it anywhere. A strange tale of a black-eyed boy, supernatural summons to MIB, and black-eyed kids. Maybe. Black-eyed kids, children of the MIB? Maybe. Because the MIB reports them having black eyes too. Black-eyed element or black-eyed alien. Black-eyed people erasing the shadows. 42 minutes in. All right. Should I look at this? Maybe. Encounters with black eyes kids. Let's go look for encounters with black eyes kids. The children approach quietly yet forcefully. They insist on coming inside your house and use the telephone to get a drink of water. For some reason, these children frighten you and ask for your, we already really covered this. Let's just get into tales of black-eyed children began appearing on online forums in the late 1990s. I published my first article in Black-Eyed Kids in 2008, and since then I have seen reports of these entities go from rare to common. Explanations of what they include are alien human hybrids, demon-possessed children, crypto-terrestrials. Regardless of their origin, one thing is certain: they're terrifying. A ghostly entity. Carrie Kisner hadn't intended to stop at the Triangle Town Center Mall on her way home from a Wake Tech Community College near Raleigh, North Carolina, but she did. From college near Raleigh, North Carolina, but she did. She wished she hadn't. There were very few people there that day and found it strangely eerie. How quiet it was, Kushner 20 said while walking back to my car. I ran at a corner and saw an older lady and a young boy. He immediately caught my attention because he was so odd looking. I had never seen anyone like him. The boy, about 12 years old, seemed average at first, but as Kushner approached him, talked with the woman, he seemed anything but average. The boy's black hair contrasted sharply with his pale skin. Dark patches hung under his eyes. It looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Kishner said he had a very thin face. As Kishner walked closer to the pair, she heard their conversation in a quiet but strong voice. The boy asked the woman for help. He stood very rigid with his hands on by his sides, looking at the ground as she fished around for her purse or something to give to him. Kishner said, as I got closer, I noticed she seemed to get more and more uncomfortable. The boy began to shift his body when Kishner passed them on his way to the car. Then he lifted his head and made eye contact with her. I froze. His eyes were black as night, very dull, almost dead. Kishner said, the look he gave me has haunted me. The feeling I got from him was as though he wasn't all there, almost ghostly. His eyes looked on Kishner as the boys turned slowly and not waiting for the older woman to give him what she dug in for. Her purse for simply walked away. Kishner doesn't know who or what the boy was, but his memory still walked. Yeah. The eyes locked on Kishner's. The boy turned slowly, not waiting for the older woman to give him what she dug for in her purse for, simply walked away. Kishner doesn't know who or what the boy was, but the memory will stick with her forever. Ever since then, the look he gave her has haunted me. She said almost like he knew what I had been thinking. What was this individual Kishner saw in the mall? Yeah, what was he thinking? I mean, what could he possibly be, huh? Well, what could he be? Something undead. Experiencer Ezekiel Finch is convinced the boys and people like him aren't human, at least not anymore. I've run into these things more than once, different ones in different states, he said with a fair degree of certainty. I can tell you what these things are. Vampires! Fred says two close encounters with black-eyed people, one in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the other in the medium-sized city of the East Coast where he lives and chose not to identify. Two of my most extensive encounters were within very, very close quarters of the low 30s. Fred said I watched them as closely as I could, standing in the cold night amongst a small crowd of people. French suddenly felt uneasy. Something was wrong. And two people there. First, it was the black-eyed eyes flatly staring over natural smiles. Then it was something subtler. Let me reread that again. Standing in the cold night amongst a small crowd of people, French suddenly felt uneasy. Something was wrong with two people there. First, it was their black eyes flatly staring over. People breathe all the time. They inhale before speaking, and that's it, French said. When they did speak, you didn't see anything, not a damn thing. Even everyone else had a visible breath. They didn't. French stood watching the pair chatting with the people around them. Steam rose from everyone else's mouths, not a thing from them. He said French studied them closely for the next 10 minutes and saw that why their breath was invisible in the cold. They weren't breathing, no movement from the torso at all, still as a corpse. Black-eyed people have become staple in the conversations of the strange and unknown, and almost every report encountered nearly similar children as young as 6 years old to adult age approach people alone with a partner and beg for help. Please let us in, give us a ride, follow us here. Permission to enter is also a legendary trait of a vampire. They ask permission for a simple reason. If someone invites you into their home, they are less likely to call the cops on you. For instance, you invite them in, you feel sorry for them. Drink with them, buy drugs from them, have sex with them, whatever angle they use to get you to open the door, they can catch you off guard, then bam, you find out why they are actually there. French's second encounter wasn't from across a parking lot or people. It was a little more personal. I had the displeasure of conversing with one as she tried to convince me it was fine for her to be invited into my home. French said it was 30-degree snow and in the ground, and she was wearing a tiny mini skirt and a spaghetti strap top, just staying there. As he stood inside his doorway, listening to this scantily clad girl beg him to let her into his home, he thought she might be under the influence of drugs, but quickly saw something else. There was no reaction to the cold, no visible breath, no inhaling. He said she could care less about the temperature or breathing. French said he doesn't believe black-eyed kids are anything short of monsters. They want you to be at ease. They want you to feel safe, just to feel like they are harmless. You want you to give them a ride or let them in. He said they are predators. Shuffling terror. Jim Stills stood in the parking lot in front of his brick apartment building in Massachusetts, the glowing ember of his cigarette bright in the night. He soon found he wasn't alone at night. I usually go stand outside to have my cigarette, he said. I noticed that there was a kid. The kid was about 12 to 16 years old. Each night Stills noticed the boy walk down the street toward him. His gait was unusual. I've lived in these buildings my whole life, and I've never seen this kid anywhere. Stills said he would show up around 10 o'clock at night and walk slowly at a sluggish place along the main road. The boy would move from, well, yeah, that is very interesting. By the way, folks, hit that like button for me, as well as please go share this video on social media. Share it at Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere. Share it on Gab. Very, very interesting. I've never seen this kid anywhere. Still said he would show up around 10 o'clock at night and walk slowly at a sluggish place along the main road. The boy would move from one building to the next, checking doors. It was enough to spook me out, so I stopped going out at front at night, but he still looked for him. Staring at his window, Stills would see him night after night, slowly pacing up and down the street until about 3 a.m. Eventually, Stills forgot about the boy, and one night went outside for a smoke. When he saw what he saw terrified him. Standing right next to my door was the kid, Stills said, standing and looking at me, asking if I could buzz him inside the building. The boy's his face was covered by his hoodie, but Stills saw his eyes totally black. He said, not a single drop of color anywhere. Stills told the boy he couldn't let him inside and bolted back inside the building, making sure the door was locked behind him. I had this overwhelming feeling of absolute terror in my body, and he said I didn't help sleep and occasionally looked at my window, the boy pacing around the road. I haven't seen him in the months now, but won't sit out for a nighttime anymore. They're monsters. Anonymous posted my blog, Black Eyed Children, said that battled one in the woods. Battled one in the woods. It appeared in the form of a 15-year-old girl, he wrote. I noticed its pure black eyes. It was forceful, then aggressive. Somehow my fear changed to anger. Anonymous said this girl had rows of shark-like teeth, and as it moved closer to him, the black eyes seemed to become even darker. Whatever these entities are, the fact is people around the globe are encountering them. Beings that look human but are something else, something dark. Finch thinks they're feeding off us. Sorry, no alien human hybrids, no demonically possessed kids, no horrors from beyond time. They're monsters. Finch says, don't let them in. Don't try to make friends with them. They aren't in Rise of Twilight, more like Jeffrey Dahmer or John Wayne Gacy. Monsters. Yeah. That's cool. That is cool, though. Those are some good stories read so far. Let's see. 51 minutes in. No one watching? Got 4 likes. Hey, anybody, if you want, be sure to hit that like button for me, okay? If you've not hit that like button yet, please do so. Please hit it, as well as please go share this video on social media. Black-eyed kids, omens of death. Black-eyed children, an early report. Black-eyed children and nuclear nightmares. Coming to the end of this live stream, folks. But we're having some fun. I mean, we're all having a lot of fun. Last year, I wrote 4 articles here at Mysterious Universe on the matter. Well, I'm reading this. Well, let's get into this one. The matter of numerous people who had experienced nightmares of terrifying nuclear explosions of cities destroyed and of civilization in ruins. A number of those same nightmares revolved around a wave of sightings of Mothman-type creatures in the Chicago, Illinois area last year. You can find the first article here, second here, fourth here. There's, however, a new development. Well, I assume it's a new development on this matter. It develops around the issue of Creepy Black-Eyed Children. A few months back, Lisa Higgins published the book. It details my research from 2014 and into the MIB, the Women in Black, the BEC, and the Shadow People, and more of a related nature, as is always the case. When I have a new book out, I got a lot of feedback from people who read the book. Ron told me that a week or so after reading my book, it was published in May 2018, and Ron brought his copy of a couple of weeks later. He woke up at the dead of night with a pounding headache, a dry mouth, and a rash of his arms, which was gone by morning, which were still he was unable to move. This is a real phenomenon that many of you will have heard of, sleep paralysis. As is typical in such cases, Ron immediately found himself filled with fear. This is hardly surprising. Standing at the side of the bed were 2 young children, maybe 10 or 11 years in age, who stared at Ron through the completely black eyes. Their skin was pale, and they were both dressed dressed in black hoodies. In seconds, Ron's bedroom was flooded with apocalyptic images of flattened or millions dead, and by the sky filled with blackness. Ron knew what the cause was. A huge mushroom cloud dominated what was left of the city. Suddenly, the image was gone, as were the BEC. Ron told me that he had near sleepless nights for the next 3 nights. Thankfully, the BEC did not return. Nor did the nightmare. Adrian Clark of England told me a similar story. In Adrian's case, it was around 3 o'clock September 2018. And he, too, suddenly found himself wide awake and with a pair of black-eyed children looking at him from the foot of his bed. Both had completely black eyes but were dressed in orange robes, suddenly similar to Ron's experience. Adrian briefly found himself deep in the heart of a nightmarish world of billions dead and Earth devastated. He fought against the paralysis and finally managed to break the spell. The image was gone, as were the other. Well, everything was gone. Or whether, the image was gone. Moving on, there was the account of Jennifer, and who I met at the September 2018 Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, who lived in Point Pleasant after I gave my lecture at my book. Jennifer came up to my table and shared with me her experience, which occurred in April 2018. She, too, was woken from her sleep by a pair of pale kids with huge dark eyes. One of them went to one of the walls in her bedroom, which was suddenly transformed into a purportedly 8-foot by 8-foot image of a nuclear explosion. Jennifer told me that for reasons she wasn't sure, she somehow knew that the city was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was never been to Milwaukee, nor does she have friends or family there like Ron and Adrian. Shaken to the core by her experience. It should be noted that both Adrian and Ron had told me the book, which in part does focus on the BEC, and Jennifer read about the book online. That is very interesting. Just got nothing really there, I saw. But what we've looked at tonight is we looked at black-eyed children tonight. But we also looked at the various variants as well. And stuff. So all of this, what are these kids? What's going on? I mean, wow, just these stories, they're cool. I mean, I really enjoyed tonight, folks. Now, let's go off and let me show you my trailer to my Indiegogo, stuff like that. All right. All right, here we go. Bored without any great comic books to read, as if you're falling through the depths of space, then come read Scumdogs. It's one hell of a great comic book. You're just going to love it. And unlike the blue-haired land whales or the purple land whales, you won't get anything like a Judith politics in it. You can hear it on the wind. Scumdogs. Just a great comic. Just barging down your door, seeing all the little purple bastards running and screaming in terror. That's Scumdogs. You'll see the amazing sights of people running past gigantic, bizarre pictures, with bizarre happenings, and great stories that will make you just love the story. You'll get characters like Soppy here, Hair Mail Doctor, Miss Breasty Melons, and you'll also get Murder Mouth, as well as the ultimate character, Death Mug. Yes, Death Mug, and you'll see him fight his arch enemy, Buick Starcode, who leads his team into space versus the Wild Rangers in epic battles against the Scumdogs. You'll get characters like Hair Mail Doctor fighting Beach Pounder in an epic battle with a blast tank along as well, firing off his missiles in an epic showdown that will leave you grasping and wanting more. That's Scumdogs. Go and back it on Indiegogo. You'll get 3 covers. You'll get this cover here that's just awesome, the 90s violent muscle cover. You'll get this one where basically a parody of of the characters just working at a burger joint, okay? You also get 3 covers, as well as the cover with them just chasing down purple land whales, okay? Little purple bastards. But it's going to be awesome. Get back these 3 covers on Indiegogo. Back my comic book. You're just going to love it. That's Scumdogs. Come and get it on Indiegogo. All right, folks. Thank you all for joining me today. This has been a great live stream. Remember, folks, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you, okay? This is misspelled, so it's Read Comics, they're bad for you. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that like button as well. Please go share this video on social media, as well as please go, leave some comments down below, because I love to hear from you guys, as well as please go share this on Twitter and Facebook and Gab. Hit that like button. Remember also to go over to Stitch Together Picks. It's another YouTube channel. It's hosted by a great host. You're going to love his reviews of movies. They are great. As well as go over to Creepy Little Book and subscribe to him too. He releases small videos talking about high strangeness. He also does live streams every night. He live streams on weekdays at 12:30 a.m. where he talks, and he live streams on weekends at 11 o'clock p.m. He talks about aliens and ghosts, and you learn so much from his live streams. That's Creepy Little Book. His channel is great. Go and subscribe to Creepy Little Book, as well as go over and please subscribe go to Rumble and subscribe to my Rumble channel. It's under the name Comic Freak, as well as I upload my videos there, as well as go over to please go over to BitChute and subscribe to my BitChute channel. It is also named Comic Freak. I upload all my videos there as well. Also, folks, please remember, come back tomorrow around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock for another, or 8 or 10 for another live stream. So yeah, please come back again then. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me.